From the Times Center in New York City, City University Television, in association with the New York Times, presents a TimesTalks series with editors and writers of the New York Times. Today's presentation, James McAvoy, First Class. Times interviewer, Dave Itzkoff.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Olson-Day of the New York Times, and I am so delighted to welcome you to this exciting TimesTalks. Tonight's guest is a remarkable film and stage actor. He was here at Arts and Leisure Weekend 2010 when he was last appearing in the award-winning film The Last Station. And we, and you, liked him so much that we had to have him back. Since then, he appeared as a Union captain in Robert Redford's Civil War drama, The Conspirator, and as the young Charles Xavier, years before he became Professor X in X-Men First Class, which opens in theaters everywhere June 3rd. He has been awarded his profession's highest honors, the 2007 BAFTA Scotland Award for Best Actor for The Last King of Scotland, the London Critics Circle 2008 Best Actor Award for his role in Atonement, for which he also received a Golden Globe nomination. And last year, he was nominated for the prestigious Laurence Olivier Award as Best Actor for his work on the London stage in 3 Days of Rain. And as some of you will remember, he was nominated for the Best Kiss Award by the 2009 MTV Movie Awards for Wanted. You'll hear much more about the singular talent, his career, and his new film, X-Men First Class, from our moderator. A reporter on the culture desk of the New York Times, he is the lead contributor to the must-read Art Beat blog on nytimes.com. Every day, it's a great place to pick up tidbits about who's next on Broadway and what films are being made and what new books will be coming out. He's also the author of Lads and the unsparingly honest memoir, Cocaine's Son, which was a New York Times Editor's Choice this past January. For TimesTalks, he's interviewed such diverse, wide-ranging guests as Russell Brand and Michelle Williams. So please join me in welcoming Dave Itzkoff and our very special guest, James McAvoy.
Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Thank you for missing out on the American Idol finale to be here with us tonight.
It's like cocaine to me. I don't know how I've managed to kick the habit.
Are you rooting for Lauren, or do you think Scotty's going to take it all?
Well, if I'm being honest, if I knew who the people were, I'd make an informed decision. We have our own version of the same show, and you know, I'm devoted to that. So I don't have. I'm sorry, I don't know who the people are, but I'm sure they're very good.
Do you try to keep up with American popular culture? Is it only when you're in the States to promote your films that it crosses your radar?
Do you know, we don't really have to try too hard to receive it. It's so much of popular culture comes from America anyway, and so much of it is on our TV sets and in our cinemas and in our theatres as well. I've got to say, we get a lot of good American shows over in the West End. So you don't have to look too hard for it, but and some of it's just fantastic.
Right.
That sounded so fake, didn't it? Some of it's just great. No, I love America. It's fantastic.
You had me fooled.
Thank you. I was using my acting against you.
Right. Now, you just came from a big premiere for your new film, X-Men First Class. Do you feel like, you know, when you make a movie like that, have you attained a certain level of status or visibility, or do you still feel like, you know, you're kind of a striver and that your greatest accomplishments are still yet to come?
Yeah, I hope my greatest accomplishments are still to come. That's what I hope. That's not what makes you strive. I think what makes you strive is just the fear that what you're doing right now won't work. And you won't be any good in it, and nobody will ask you back again. And there's so many actors out there trying to make it. There's there's so few jobs for them to take, even though for my money there's too many movies being made, but that sounds like a paradox thing. So yeah, just the fear that you know, you're putting yourself out there on a limb every time you act because you're being judged, and that's fair enough, but it's you as a person that's being judged. It's not the, maybe it's different, maybe I'm underestimating what a carpenter does, but say a carpenter makes a chair, the chair is judged ultimately. Right. I don't know, for me it's whatever I do as an actor, as much as you try to play someone else, as much as you try and inhabit someone else's soul and all that stuff, if people don't like it, it's you they don't like. It's nothing else but you, and that's what spurs you on to kind of, to, you know, not to make people like you, not that, right, but to just do something that stands on its own and you can be proud of, you know.
People do like you, you know that. I mean, part of the
sometimes.
reason,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I mean, we had you back because, you know, the last time you were here, people liked you so much that they insisted that you come back.
Excellent, thank you. I shall endeavour to be mildly entertaining, I promise.
When you started acting, I mean, could you even fathom the idea of being in, you know, big Hollywood movies, films that would get shown around the world? Was that even an aspiration?
No. Well, yeah, I suppose it was an aspiration, but when I first started acting, I was 16, and a very excellent actor and director called David Heyman, not to be confused with the guy who produces the Harry Potter movies, who's also excellent, gave me a job pretty much out of the blue. I was having a fight, not a stand-up fight, but I was having an argument with my friend in the street, and it was going to come to blows, and oh no, that's a different story. This one was, sorry, that
We're coming back
different.
To that one, by the way.
Yeah, it was the same mate though that I was sitting beside in the room when we were talking about Macbeth at high school when I was 16 years old, and he had played Lady Macbeth to great acclaim at the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow in the 70s. Anyway, he came and gave us a chat. I went and said to him, thanks very much, that was really interesting, and he gave me an audition 6 months later for this movie about child prostitution and pornography in Glasgow. And so when I got that, I just thought, I'm not an actor, I'm lucky to get a job. Right. I'd never done anything like it before. When I went to drama school, I kind of thought, I'm lucky to get in. And certainly wasn't the start of my year or anything like that. So when I left, I was planning to maybe look into teaching. I was also planning to, you know, find a job that would let me be flexible enough to take auditions and maybe go away if I got the odd job. But you know, and I could never have dreamed that I would have the career that I've got. So yeah, in your wildest dreams, you go, right, yeah, doing that kind of stuff is groovy. But you know, I'd have been happy with much less.
Right. Now tell us the fight story.
The fight story. He was my best friend, one of my best friends at the time, and we just wound each other up so badly that we ended up fighting. I totally won the fight, but I looked like the one that lost the fight. I had 2 black eyes. He was very proud of that. Nobody else saw the fight. Nobody else saw me winning it. Oh, it was terrible. Anyway.
When you grow up in Glasgow and you want to pursue acting as a profession, I mean, are there, you know, as many options available to you? I mean, particularly to train, as say in London. Is there many?
There's less opportunity in Scotland. There's a few schools, there's a few courses throughout the city, throughout the country, but the other major one, Queen Margaret, got, if not completely closed down, it got reduced drastically. So the only main conservatoire in the whole of Scotland is in Glasgow, luckily the city of my birth. And it's the only one I applied to, and luckily I got in. If I hadn't got in, I think I may have just gone off to do something else. I was thinking about the Navy, and I'd been accepted also to university in Glasgow, so maybe I'd have gone and done that. Right. The fact that I got in just seemed like fortune at the right time, and I thought, it's probably going to be easier than going to university, and it'll probably be a good laugh. It is weird, isn't it, how the conception, or the perception of acting, I think, is that it's an easy gig. Even I thought it, do you know what I mean? So 3 years of drama school will be much easier, but the truth is I've never worked as hard in the profession as I did in 3 years at drama school. It was like being in the army, man. It was intense.
Speaking of the army, I mean, you landed a role pretty early on in your career in the World War II miniseries Band of Brothers, and that perhaps is one of the first things that American audiences might have seen you in. Was that something that, I mean, even for a role like that, did you have to, you know, really work hard to get that lined up, or was that something else that kind of just
They saw every single young man and man beneath the age of 30, I'd say, in the entire country, in Britain, because they were looking for people who were British but could do American accents, and they needed, I think, literally about 150 of us, you know. They brought about 20 American actors over from here. We filmed it all in North London, strangely. And yeah, so it was just like that. I went in for like 3 parts. I ended up getting offered a different part in it, which I couldn't take because I was doing a play up in Edinburgh. And then eventually went in another 2 or 3 times and finally got some sugar.
Right. Did you happen to cross paths yet with Michael Fassbender when you were working on that?
Yeah, and I thought on that job, a lot of the British guys were getting a little bit method, and they were like, you know, being all kind of like, you know, hoo-ha, and, you know, whoa, and then we got guns and stuff. But some of the guys were, just to make it easier, were staying in the accent all the time. And I thought Michael was American because he stayed in the accent all the time, and his accent was absolutely spot on. So it wasn't until about 5 years later I was on my motorbike, or not, my Vespa at the time, and you know, I was like, you know, I ride a motorbike now, I'm much cooler, but back then it was like a little, you know, and I was riding along the road and I just heard, James, McAvoy. I was like, what the fuck is that? I stopped at the lights and this other Vespa kind of went, and he went, it's me, it's Michael. And I went, what? I can't, who, what? Because the visor on the helmet stops me from seeing it. It's Fassbender. And I was totally dumbstruck. I thought, this man is a classically brilliant actor. I was certain he was from North America.
For those of you that don't know, Michael is one of James's co-stars in the new X-Men film. He plays his friend.
Friend and nemesis.
Yes, turned nemesis.
Oh, yeah. He's just a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know if some of you guys are aware of X-Men or would like to see X-Men, but he's just incredible in it. Really, really strong, dead sexy.
I understand that the two of you have struck up quite a friendship since making and working on the film together. Is that right?
Yeah, no, we really backed each other up. I think we were both aware that like a movie like that needs a really strong hook in terms of dramatic narrative or just heart, really. Otherwise it can just become bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors and action. And at the heart of it lay this brilliant relationship that all the other X-Men fans have been sort of crying out to see more of, because they only saw snippets of it in the other movies. And this whole movie is about this central relationship, about 2 men who define each other and ultimately hurt each other to a point where they end up on opposite sides of a world-changing argument. Anyway, and we thought that central relationship was incredibly important to just make it more than an action movie. So we backed each other up every day on set and made sure that it didn't disappear and that the action didn't take over and the whole superhero moviness of it all didn't take over. And that was something that was just joyous to be part of, because it's harder to deal with 2 actors than it is with one, especially when they're on the same page. They can't mess with you as much.
Yeah. I was slipped a piece of information regarding you and Michael and a golf cart that might have belonged to your director, Matthew
Who told you that?
I'm not at liberty to say, but can I ask you to share that tale?
Michael's a guy who loves his vehicles, and we both share a passion for motorbikes, actually. And we've graduated from the Vespas. And every day we would race after a take to get back to, if we had to go and get a makeup change or whatever, we would race to get to the director's golf cart because it's fun. And generally Michael Fassbender, the whippet that he is, the greyhound of a man that he is, would get there first. Anyway, this one day I got there first, and he thought, well, I'm not going to just sit and be driven. He decided to counterbalance. I don't know if you've ever seen those racing bikes that have sidecars, and the person in the sidecar's job is to lean off to the side and give extra traction. Anyway, he decided to do that in a golf cart. We were going round at incredible speeds of 12, 13 miles an hour, and he was doing his counterbalance thing, and I got very cocky because we'd just done some exceptional stuff, and we were going into the caravan park, and the traction we got was incredible, and we literally turned at a right angle, and we smacked into the back of a van. I went flying forward, smacked my head off the screen. I was flown 15 foot to the side. I looked up. He had somehow managed to get from here all the way to like here, and he was somehow, from standing in the back, sitting in the driving seat. Just looking at me going, huh? And his shins were all cut up. And the great thing is that everybody looked at him in the driving seat and blamed him, which was kind of wonderful. But then he proceeded to run away. When I say he ran away, I don't mean just like he sidled off. He did a comedy sort of caper, like out of there, and left me to take the heat. Anyway, that was actually not very cool, and I felt very bad, and we had to pay for the damage that we caused. And yeah, I don't do drugs or anything like that, so let me away with this one indiscretion.
That'll be on the DVD extras.
It's the most rock and roll I think I've ever been, going 12 miles an hour in a golf cart.
Well before the X-Men movie, one of the first starring roles that American audiences might have been able to see you in was a TV film version of Children of Dune, which comes from the Frank Herbert Dune novels.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. Some people are very comfortable acknowledging that they are Dune fans. That's
I'm a
great.
Dune fan,
That's
yeah.
great. Really?
Yeah.
I was curious. When you read a script like that and you're reading about these references to sandworms and mystical spices, I mean, you feel a kind of affinity for that? Or
Well, I read the book when I was, I think I must be about 14 or something like that when I read the first book. So I definitely had an affinity, and I loved the book. I also loved the David Lynch film as well, as mental as it is, and psychedelic as it is at times. But that's something that's part of the tone of Frank Herbert's writing as well. I think there is a real sort of trippy element to his writing. I mean, all of his characters are high on this thing called spice. You know, it's like a world pervading drug that just gets into everything, you know, and they're all high on it.
Yeah. Well, he wrote it, I think, in the 60s, so we forgive him.
Well, they get even more trippy and psychedelic as they go on, like Chapter House Dune and all of that. I mean, it gets really kind of mental. Right.
I mean, you may know this in America. I mean, I think things have settled down now, but you know, geek culture was not always looked on as being a favorable thing to participate in. It was something you had to kind of keep underneath the covers, at least for a while. Is it similar in Scotland? If you're into science fiction and fantasy, was it something you had to keep from your friends?
I read The Lord of the Rings in primary 6 when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and there was a group of us led by Peter Stirling and Stephen McGowan, who were leading this sort of, I suppose it was like a book group in its infancy, and yeah, I have to say we were sort of like laughed at a little bit for reading that and all those kind of things, but it wasn't to the point where we were being beaten up for it or anything like that. At least I can't speak for the other fellas, but I never got beaten up for it.
Right. We already know you can defend yourself, so maybe that helps.
I am a bit of a ninja.
Right.
I don't mean to brag.
Once you have made a movie like Children of Dune, I mean, does that lead to your getting offered other kinds of strange things that people see that you've got a kind of science fiction affinity and they want to put you in their monster movie of the week, that kind of thing?
I would have loved that, but no, it never really happened. I kind of went off and did lots of costume dramas for a little while after that. There's a weird similarity between doing, maybe not all sci-fi, but like high sci-fi, and I put the Dune Chronicles in that bracket because it is so high concept and high in its themes, and I put it in the same kind of bracket as doing costume drama. You've got to commit to both of them, and almost more than you do in contemporary stuff. So yeah, but anyway, I didn't get offered too much more sci-fi monstery stuff. I became a sandworm. I think that was it. It was over. Nobody wanted to see that again.
Who would you say is more rabid, the Dune Frank Herbert fans or the Jane Austen fans?
Jane Austen fans, 100%. Yeah. I'd definitely go. I wouldn't want to pick a fight with a Jane Austen.
Do you have people, coming up to you and trying to quote Jane Austen lines back to you, thinking that you're going to pick up on the reference?
A little bit, sometimes, yeah. But it's such a weird kind of bastardized version of a Jane Austen novel that we did, because we kind of tried to take her life and pretend that it was just like Pride and Prejudice, which of course it wasn't, but there were some real parallels there, and we chose to amp them up where they existed and ignore the contradictions where they existed. So yeah, but that's what I get. I get people kind of pointing out how certain elements of that film were completely untrue, and of course they were. But it was rather than a sort of documentary on her early part of her life. It was more a sort of more kind of discussion upon like elements of her artistic soul and her work.
Right.
Not really that highbrow, but
Not to jump around too much, but even before people saw you in a film like Becoming Jane, I think the first movie that probably a lot of American viewers saw you in was Last King of Scotland, in which you appeared.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you were the sometime advisor and sometime prisoner to Forrest Whitaker.
And sometime co-cavorter as well. Yeah.
Part of what makes that film work so well is that Forrest. He's so convincing in his menace, and that you often do seem to be completely under his spell at times. I mean, is it was he sort of always in character, always method during that?
He was. I mean, he wasn't 100% in character. He wasn't going about trying to chop people's heads off, but but he was in contact with his character at all times, shall we say? And that's a terrifying thing. He was constantly in accent, so whether he was having a chat to you about the time of day or not, you were going, if you're an accent man, what else is in contact with your character? And I don't know, I think maybe that way that he made everybody else around him feel uncomfortable during that film was part of what he maybe tapped into that Amin was doing. It seems like Amin was trying to put everybody else off balance all the time. He was restructuring the army around him, he was restructuring the government around him, trying to keep everybody guessing, and he seemed like he was a master at doing it as well. One of the main things about Amin was that he couldn't read or write, so he was very worried about being double-crossed in writing, in paperwork, in laws going through the government, and him not being aware of what was actually happening. So he ended up firing a lot of people around him who could read and write. So he had a lot of government officials. Like at one point, the head of the military minister ended up being his former chauffeur. So things like that kept happening, and I think he wanted to keep everybody around him in the dark, and that kind of double back kind of behaviour, that behaviour where he could turn on a dime, was maybe conscious, or maybe it was just a survival instinct. I don't know. But Forrest was quite like that as well. Well, he was really disconcerting.
Yeah. When you get into arguments with people now, do they still use that line on you? But you did not persuade me, James.
No, thank God. Thank God. I'd have to run away. So if people started quoting Amin lines at me, oh man, it would make me give up acting.
Were you recruited for that role, or were you asked to be seen for it in part because of your Scottish background, and they specifically wanted somebody to?
I think they wanted to make that film for. I think they made. I might be misquoting here, and Andrea might get annoyed with me, but I think it was between $4 and $5 million they made that film for. So they couldn't really afford anybody that would demand a wage, and. I'm not joking though, and of the Scottish, it's such a Scottish part. Yeah. I think the maker of the director was Scottish, and one of the key producers was Scottish as well. We also had some money from Scottish Screen, which is a film finance department in Scotland. So I think there was a certain amount of, I think they wanted some integrity in the casting. They didn't want to have an English person or an American actor coming and being Scottish. I don't know why. But of all the Scottish actors who had any profile at that time, they were all too old. Like Ewan and Gerard Butler and all that were kind of beyond that sort of 21, 22-year-old age. And of all the actors of that age that were right, none of us had a profile. I'd done a little bit on TV and things. So I think it was just a case of they took a punt on me. They told me I had the part. I couldn't really believe it. I didn't even know if I got the script that much. And then about 6 months after they gave me the part, they made me audition for the part, which was absolutely crushing. And also, I didn't really get the character that well, I didn't think, off the page. So I felt like I'm going to go in and do this audition, and then I'm not going to get the part. They're going to give it to somebody in America or a bigger actor in England or something. But it worked out, and I got the part, and then arriving in Uganda, things started to fall into place. And I'm glad they did, because I did feel like I was winging it. I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing, which started to kind of erode as I got there, and I started to find my feet. And I think what it was as well was basically, it was one of the first lead roles that I'd had where I was in every single scene, and I had to learn how to guide a narrative as an actor, not just be guided by a director because you are a member of this cast telling a story. The story kind of, as much as it's properly Idi Amin's film, the narrative is that Nicholas Garrigan's narrative, and I had to guide that, and I don't think I'd ever really realised how to do that before. And that you're on your own doing that as an actor. Very rarely can anybody help you, you know.
Did the reception that the film got, I mean, did you find that doors were starting to open to you that weren't before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'd done Narnia before that, and that had sort of brought me to an American audience and the American studios and all that kind of thing. But at the same time as that, I think they saw me as the guy with the furry legs and the and the horns, and he's like the kind of slightly fey fawn, who questionably captures a young girl and then kidnaps her. It's so weird. And he's a fawn, but he's a satyr, which is, you know, classically the Dionysian sort of symbol for promiscuousness and drunkenness and orgies. And C.S. Lewis chose that classical mythical figure to meet little Lucy Pevensey. You know what I mean? And people go like, yeah, there's a dark story there somewhere. And then he kidnaps her. Anyway. So anyway, I think they saw me as that questionable character. But I think Nicholas Garrigan and the success of Last King of Scotland helped to sort of move people's opinion a little bit, and it's all about opinions, isn't it, and what people think you can do and all that. So I was very lucky.
Right. So Last King of Scotland, at least here, came out in 2006, and then in the States the following year. You appeared in two very well-received and significant films. We talked a little bit first about Becoming Jane, and you also played poor Robbie Turner in Atonement, a man who really suffers for that.
Thank you.
So was that the beginning of the James McAvoy heartthrob years?
Those long lost years.
Is it hard for you to think of yourself in those terms?
Yeah, because there's my life gives me very little evidence that would show me that was the case. I think my wife fancies me, but on a good day. Those characters. I mean, when you're playing a romantic part, I suppose it was the parts, really, wasn't it? They were both. One of them was. For me, anyway, was the idealized sort of almost unattainable version of a man in Robbie, Atonement, and not that I am that at all, but the character he was just so perfect, and the trick in that film, the beauty of that film, is the fact that we destroy him utterly and tear him apart and kill him and damage his soul, his perfect soul, his beautiful, beautiful soul, and make him real. And that's the sad thing. We feel like he's been destroyed, but actually he's just been made a real person because he was perfect. He was unattainable. He was just a myth before that. I think Joe Wright, the director of that film, often said that I want him to be Christ-like, which I went, well, I can't play that. I don't know how you play that note, mate, but but I know what he means though, because he's just so good. Anyway, it still gets me that part. But the other guy was just a bit of a cad and much more down the lines of, he was very much in love with himself and thought he was very charming. And it was actually through meeting somebody else that he becomes a man. He becomes a little bit more whole, you know.
Right, right. Now, I mean, those are obviously films, very distinct, different, periods of history. But just, when you're approaching a period character, are you thinking about, I want to play this person, in a way that sort of emphasizes how they were unique or distinct or different in that era, or do you want to sort of play them as real, contemporary people who just happen to be living in a past year?
I suppose it's a mixture of both. You don't want to get bogged down by the technicalities and of mannerism or of etiquette. It can get a bit overbearing, all that stuff, and take your mind off a good story, and that's ultimately why we're there. We just want to be told a good story. But you need to believe in the world if you're going to be told a good story, and all that etiquette stuff is really important. And also they restrict you. It's difficult to have a scene without obstacles, and you have no drama without obstacles. And what's nice about those types of period movies, especially with the kind of Becoming Jane, where it was, an even more strict period, even stricter period, the characters are forced to be more eloquent. They're not orators, but they're forced to be more verbose. They're forced to be more intelligent. They're forced to be less direct. Which I think lends itself to, and I'm not saying it's a massive work of poetry, the writing in it or anything like that, but it lends itself to a more imaginative way of speaking and a more, artistic way of speaking, I think. Something like Atonement, that was a stylistic filmmaker's choice, where we decided not to necessarily speak with period accents, but we decided to speak with period accents as the film actors of that period would speak, because that movie was all about storytelling, really. It was all about lies and the power of story. So we decided to play it out like a story, so we were acting like movie actors of the time a little bit, not necessarily how people would act.
I find that if I see Saoirse Ronan in anything now, and she's grown up, but there's a part of me that still just wants to throttle her for what she did to you. Do you have a similar reaction? Or do you imagine that?
She phoned me up a couple of weeks ago, actually. We were having a chat on the phone, and no, I have to say that I was just dead happy to hear from her. She's a proper woman now as well. It's nuts.
Yeah.
She used to sit on my knee and bounce it up and down and all that. Not that like she was a 4-year-old or anything like that, but
Yeah.
And it was fine. It felt right. But this is it's just so. She's a proper woman. It's just so weird to see. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of really young actors in my career on a TV show called Shameless, which I think has just been remade here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we had loads of kids on that. On Narnia, there was loads of kids as well, and we just, I've loved it. But it's so sad. It makes me feel like an old man because they're all men and women now, and I don't even feel like I've been acting that long. But it just makes you think, God, it's going to go so quick, this life.
Yeah. You did the original version of Shameless, and you also did the original version of State of Play, which came out as a movie here.
Thank you.
I mean, when you see these productions get translated to, U.S. versions, I mean, is there a part of you that says, oh, come on, take me with you? Why can't I be part of that?
I spoke to Kevin MacDonald, who directed Last King of Scotland, who also directed State of Play, the American version of the film, while we were publicising Last King of Scotland. And we were on a train, and I'd read the script for State of Play, and he said, do you think you'd want to be in it to play my old part, Dan? Who didn't end up appearing in the movie, and I just said to him, no, because I think you're going to cut the part out of the film. And they did. There's just 6 hours of TV and plot and intrigue is very hard to get into 2 hours of movie, and I think that's what you end up losing is the characters and the relationships to kind of fit all the plot in. But yeah, I think I'd have been happy to rock up and do my old part. It would have been weird substituting Bill Nye with Dame Helen Mirren though. This would have been very strange. Both very sexy in their own way, but it would have been a very different dynamic. You'd have a whole Oedipal complex instead of the kind of father-hating complex.
Now, Atonement was the one that you were nominated for the Golden Globe, right?
Yeah.
Was that your sort of first introduction to the the sort of American monster of award season? Had you done that before?
I'd been fortunate enough and blown away to be involved in the Oscars the year before, or maybe 2 years before, I'm not sure. When they just asked me to present. Right. So I got a glimpse of it then, but I wasn't involved in the machine of the Oscar campaigns and all that kind of stuff. In saying that, that's not true. I was involved in the machine of the Oscar campaigns for Last King of Scotland, and that was like a 3-week sort of, I felt like I was on drugs for 3 weeks, just flying from here to there, here to there, here to there, telling people how great the movie is, please vote for us, we're dead nice. It's weird, all that, you know. But the Golden Globe thing was remarkable, and I was very, very, very honoured to be included. It happened to be in the year of the writers' strike, and they cancelled the award ceremony. So the year that I got nominated for it, I never even got to go and celebrate. So we all sat around the television, everybody involved in the film, and got very excited as they read it out on the news. I know. And then the producer, one of the producers of the film, one of the lead distributors of the film, we'd won an award, and I can't remember what one it was. I think it might have been best film, or it might have been best director. I'm not sure. But anyway, they came out and said, right, listen, we just wanted to say we've learned from the news network before they've broadcast it that we've actually won best blah blah blah. I can't remember which one it was. And then all the rest of us that were nominated in that room just went, all right, so we've not won then. Thanks very much. Thanks. Nice way to break the news. Thank you so much. Nice anticlimax.
Did they, are they going to compensate you by getting you into a future Golden Globe ceremony to make up for the one you missed?
No. There was no kind of IOU issued, unfortunately. But hopefully I'll get taken along one day.
Yeah. So the films we were talking about, those came out in 2007. In 2008, you starred with Angelina Jolie in Wanted, in which you played kind of a very atypical protagonist in an action film. The guy was sort of, yeah.
Too right.
They've seen them all. But this was a character who it sort of emphasized that he is sort of imperfect and inadequate, and has to be shown that he's actually got these skills hidden down beneath. I mean, when you're asked to play a role like that, does it do anything to the ego?
No way, man. I think it's the kind of role I'd prefer to play, really, because I think. I don't know. I mean, beautiful, perfect people need to have stories told about them as well, but are they really that interesting? I don't know.
You tell me.
No, they're not. Who wants to know about happy people? God, you can tell I watch a lot of Lithuanian sheep shooting subtitled films. Don't want to watch happy films. Just want to sit at home and slip my wrist. I prefer to play. I think we'd all prefer to watch the underdog. I think nobody wants to watch that guy succeed from minute 1 to minute 90. You want to watch an arc, and also that character had a massive character arc. We watched him change in the course of one film, and that is what you want as an actor, really. It's nice to play characters who are coming in and they are so of themselves, and you marvel at them, this incredible thing that they are. They're so of themselves. But actually, I prefer to play a character who's so something, who goes to so something else, and there's a big arc in between, But not every partner is like that.
Right. And this is one. You had to try out for this one a couple of times.
I screen tested a couple of times for this one, and I didn't think I'd get it. So I just thought, I'll go and see what happens. And I ended up Timur, our director, who is this mental maverick, clever genius type dude. Had me screen testing, doing this scene where I met Angelina Jolie, and she wasn't there, obviously. She was, she was in a traffic jam or something, and but he ended up just going, why don't you try and commit suicide in this scene? And I was like, what? If I get this part, I thought I'd be the lead. And he was really keen on the idea of suicide in the film, which he later managed to get Angelina Jolie to satisfy for him, because she committed suicide and subsequently ruined any chance of a franchise, which is hilarious. I cannot believe the producer said, yeah, what a great idea, Angelina. She was like, ah, great. He had me eating a whole pack of Tic Tacs, or like a whole box of Tic Tacs, pretending they were, I don't know, some kind of painkiller or something like that, and going into like kidney failure in a supermarket. Just very, very strange man. Anyway, I got the part, and then he tried to kill me for 4 months on the set.
And you did get to do some particularly tasty stunts in that film, but I presume you suffered for your art in order to do that.
I did a little bit, but I was really lucky. I had a great trainer, a guy called Glenn Chapman, who got me really fit. And kind of bulked up a little bit for it, but more than that, he just got me strong enough to be able to do a lot of this stuff, which was fantastic. I also had a great former kickboxing world champion, Rudy Verba, who was my stunt double, who really, I won't lie, like there's stuff that I just didn't do in that film, but there's a lot of stuff that I did do in that film, and it's because of him as well. Just working with somebody so physically capable is quite an amazing thing. He's just that bit quicker than you. He's just that bit more dexterous than you, and just knows where to plant his foot. That makes everything work. It's quite amazing watching. You kind of go stuntman, yeah, they get paid to take a knock, but they're real artists at times, and that was really exceptional because he made me capable of doing things that I would never have been able to do.
Right. Was that your sort of first experience with a big expensive Hollywood summer movie with all the sort of apparatus that comes with that?
I suppose Narnia was an introduction, but I was a kind of small part player in that, really. So I kind of just visited set a lot and played with the kids, and then did a little bit of filming, really. And with this, that was probably my first introduction. Right. But again, it felt much more like what I was talking about earlier with The Last King of Scotland. Last King of Scotland really helped me out with Wanted, because it was that thing where the entire narrative is based on, you've got all these cool things to do with the story that are really essential, don't get me wrong, but if that character couldn't tell you a story from beginning to the end, then the film doesn't work. And nobody can help you with that. That's your job as an actor, to, through a characterization, tell a story. And you're on your own. Anyway, doing Last King of Scotland really sort of primed me for that.
Right. This is just a pure geek question, but did you ever get to meet Mark Miller, who wrote the original comics?
Mark's from my hometown of Glasgow. Yeah. And he's I don't know him that well, so if anybody knows any different, please say, but he seems like one of the nicest men in the business, and yet he writes the most nihilistic, violent, sometimes worryingly violent stuff. Yeah. And it's just so weird because he's such a nice man.
I will have to take your word on that, because his comics in particular are pretty.
They are. I mean, I couldn't. When I read Wanted, the graphic novel, I was stunned, man, absolutely stunned. Yeah. Then I read the script and kind of breathed a sigh of relief and realised that they'd taken a step back from some of it.
You also didn't have to remake yourself to look like Eminem, as he kind of does in the comic.
I know. It's so. And the other character that Angelina plays was based on Halle Berry. Yeah. It's so weird, isn't it? Yeah. No, I don't know if Marshall Mathers is annoyed with me for taking his part, but I'll fight him for it. Right. he'd have me in a minute.
So you'd gotten to make your big summer blockbuster. Now it was time for you to go back to your roots, go back to basics, and do a little Shakespeare in a film that came out earlier this year called Romeo and Juliet.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. I was like, what? Yeah.
That was you and Emily Blunt and Michael Caine, right?
Sir Michael Caine.
Yes. Is that the first animated feature that you've been part of?
I did a puppetry film called Strings once before, but that was really just revoicing the work of the original Danish cast. That's I don't know if any of you are into your puppetry, but it's stunning puppetry anyway. That was the main kind of introduction to it, and I really enjoyed it, I have to say. It was incredible. It's an incredible way to work as an actor, because they spend 3 years making this film, and you spend probably, if you're lucky, like 12 days with them over those 3 years. And every time you come back, they show you what they've done, and you go, wow, man, because the tiniest little change you've made to the script, or the tiniest little nuance that you've put in with, I don't know, a sentence or just your tone, they can take and go, do you know what, that's quite interesting, why don't we radically rewrite the script and redo everything, and they come back and you've got a whole new character to play and you need to do it all again. So it's a real workout. The other thing I find with the animated features, which I'm doing another one right now called Arthur Christmas, is that I think I'm being paid to hyperventilate, because the entire time I just spend going, Juliet, and by the end of it, it sounds like you're kind of having sex with an ostrich or something. That's an image. And by the end of it, you do need to sit down, and your face is going all red, and you're getting really, really dizzy, and you need sugary tea as well. But yeah, they're a really good fun thing to do.
Yeah. One thing that I just thought was interesting about that feature in particular is that you were sort of, you and the other voice actors were allowed to, speak in your natural voices, and they didn't ask you to put on any accents or kind of change.
I was doing an accent.
You were?
Yeah.
I
was doing sort of like Middle England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
I was quite up for making them Scottish, but they weren't into it, unfortunately. Yeah. And then because I think they'd have to go, oh God, we're going to need to cast like 15 other Scottish actors to be his family then, which for me isn't a bad thing.
Right.
But they need to make them all travel from Glasgow down to London, and then we're getting an expense, and Elton John just couldn't afford it. Wow, dig at my boss. But and then the other thing that I tried to make them a bit street, so I was like, all right there, Juliet, how's it going? But they didn't like that neither. So they spent probably about 2 sessions of 4 hours each humouring me before saying, you know how like when you do the parts in Atonement and in Becoming Jane and that thing started for 10, you know how like you're English? And you know how like you're kind of middle class, could you just do that? And you go, yeah, no problem, you're paying the wages, yes.
Right. Is that just something that you've gotten acclimated to over the years, that you've got to, you've got to have a whole sort of bag of tricks, and you have to be able to put on all different accents?
There's not that much work out there for Scottish actors. And so there's only 5 million of us. And so that it just stands to reason there's going to be less stories told about us, but even proportionately, I think there's a disproportionate number of stories told about us, which is a weird one. It's because we don't have any filmmaking or TV making machine to speak of at home. We've got something. I'm not slagging off the great stuff we can do in Scotland, and we do, but there's not enough to really service the cultural needs of a whole country, Right. So anyway, the film and television making machine in America and England isn't going to take care of it. So you have to do accents if you want to work,
So we saw you on screen earlier this year in a legitimately serious film now, playing the lawyer Frederick Aiken in Robert Redford's film The Conspirator, and we got.
Thank you.
Did you know much or anything really about just the story of this film, the historical story, before you took this on?
I knew nothing about it whatsoever, and what's remarkable is that I knew who Lincoln was, I knew who John Wilkes Booth was, and I knew that he assassinated him. And that's remarkable because I'm not American, Why would I know about that? I knew about it when I was a kid, and I think I knew John Wilkes Booth's name when I was 12 years old. That's remarkable, and therefore, that's the reason why this story had to be told. Right. Even a kid in Scotland knew the glamorous part of this story. They were the superstars, weren't they? I mean, Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth, they were the 2 most photographed men in the world at that time. And you might argue that that's why Booth shot him, because he was photographed more than Booth. Which is true, actually. So what was my point?
So learning about the story that's then told in this film.
They were the superstars. They their light shone so brightly you couldn't really see what happened next, and it was huge, and it was hugely important for the development, I suppose, of this country as well, and a real kind of moment where a country was deciding how it was going to behave and who it was going to be. That's why I've always been attracted to America. It's on purpose, and a lot of other countries, well, most other countries aren't. They're developed by accident, over thousands of years, over Even when civil wars happen and governments change, this idea of a constitution being written down by a bunch of people, of idealists, hasn't really taken hold throughout the rest of the world, and it's an incredible thing because everything is on purpose. I know it's not always adhered to, and I know it's not always, I know it's always been bent and all that kind of thing, but this country's so young, and you've got ideas about what you want to be, and I don't know, it just feels fresh.
Yeah. You got to work with a real sort of classic American filmmaker and actor, Robert Redford, on this.
I know.
I imagine, when a project like this is presented to you, I mean, you must just have certain, ideas in your head of what it's going to be like to work with him. Did that experience, did it kind of fulfill that vision? Was it completely different than what you anticipated?
He was what I expected in one way, because I'd met him once before and found him to be the most pleasant guy, like made you feel very, very comfortable, and he did do that for me. I was a little bit uncomfortable for the first couple of days on set because he wanted me to stay in the accent all the time, and it's not something that I've ever done. But I think he found it hard. I think he wanted me to stay in accent so they could understand what I was saying. And I hope you can understand me tonight. I feel like I'm quite decipherable at the moment, but when I get angry or passionate or trying to make myself understood or trying to really get to the bottom of something, I can get a little bit more. And anyway, that was the version he was getting quite a lot, and I think he wanted me to stay in accent all the time. And again, it was just something that made me feel uncomfortable, so we didn't connect very well for the first couple of days. Then we kind of started to click, and his one note was always not do less, because that sounds utterly reductive, and it sounds it's a cliche that you've probably heard lots of actors say, oh, less is more and all that. But in a very roundabout way, what he was saying was, I think, less is more, but really what that means is the story is really powerful, don't get in the way of it. I think one thing that actors can sometimes do, and I know I've done it, is go, right, I'm taking the audience's attention, they've paid to see it, and the camera is forcing them to look at me. I better be interesting. So you sort of trick it up. You try to put lots of interesting things in there. You try and be interesting. But in actual fact, every single person in the world is interesting. They're a walking story. And that was his kind of endless note to me, was stop trying to be interesting, James. You are, your character is, this story is, and it's our job to let the story tell itself, really. It's a different approach to acting than one I've taken before, but I really, really, really enjoyed it. Kind of, actually, Joe Wright in Atonement preached a similar type of thing, but executed in a very different kind of a way. But that idea of letting the story come through, and don't you try and ram it down the audience's throat. Don't get in the way of it. The story's the thing, and you're along for the ride, And that was the thing I took away from working with Robert the most, I think.
Yeah. Are there differences, in making, an American period piece as opposed to a British one, other than the accents, of course?
Yeah, I mean,